Hey, so in this video, I'm going to show you 30 n8n hacks that I wish I knew when I got started. They'll help you make your workflows at least 3 times faster and save a ton of money on execution. All of these are hacks that I had to learn the hard way over the course of the past 12 months, building and selling automation to businesses. If that sounds like something that you want to improve on and learn, then this video is for you. Let's dive in. So the first hack is actually software updates. So sometimes when you build automations on n8n, and a lot of the times when you watch videos of people actually adding steps to the automation, and they go here and then look at an app, sometimes you don't have it in your own software. It's because n8n actually updates the platform so that they're able to add more and more nodes, more and more actual executions or stuff to the platform so that you are able to make your workflows more efficient. And so the thing you have to do, the way to update your workflow or your account is to go to sign in. You'll be brought to this page. All you want to do here is you want to manage. You're going to go here and you want to press the latest version. In this case, this is beta. So you might want to press the one below or alpha or the latest stable in this case, which is the most stable version of n8n as of right now. That'll help you build your workflows in the current version. The second hack is deactivating your workflow. So let's say I have a workflow right here, trigger manually, have a HTTP request, which talks to a server. And then step after this is edit or set fields. So X equals Y, right? And then here, let's say I have my website. So if I press execute step, now this will scrape the website. Now, let's say I run this whole workflow. This will run this, and this successfully. But let's say I had a problem when I was running this. Let's say I add some more stuff. Now, if I execute workflow, this will stop right here. And when we're building automations on n8n and we want to execute this, even if this fails, then all you have to do is press on the node and press D. This way it deactivates the node so that you're able to run even the next step without this influencing the decision itself. And this stops, it doesn't even consider this node right here when it's running the automation. So if I execute workflow, even though there's an error here, it didn't run it and it will go to the next step. The third hack is not really a hack, but it's more so the fact that n8n does not charge you for the amount of test executions that you do when you're testing the workflows. So what I mean by this is that we tested this, this, and this. These are three different, or this is one execution. But if I go to the admin panel, as you can see right now I have 0. And if I run this across right now, I also have 0 again, right? So when you're testing automations in n8n, the actual amount of executions that you do or workflow executions that you do when you're testing does not count to the amount that you have to pay every single month. So to show you when you have to pay for something, I just added a schedule trigger. I'm going to activate this. So now this is going to run every 10 seconds. If I go here, I can see that this is running right now for 2, 3, 4 seconds. It's successful. And if I go here to the admin panel, I can refresh and I can see that now I have one execution out of the 2,500 that I have every single month. So this is more so how n8n actually charges you on the platform. But just know that when you're testing the automations, you are not charged for the workflow executions that you do on a testing phase. The next hack is actually pinning data. So let me remove this. Let me put a trigger manually. We have this. Let's say I have to run this every single time. You see how this may take 10 seconds, may take 15 seconds. And to test this step, let's say I wanted to do all the data here. So let me drag this across. Now, if I drag this across, so if I execute the workflow, the data here, the result that we get is a result from the previous step. And if I have to get this point of data, I have to rerun the whole thing over and over again. Well, not really, because n8n just added the feature of pinning data. So you can go here and actually pin the data so that we're able to execute this workflow almost instantly right here without having to wait for this node to run because we have test data to work with. This is great when you have a 100 node workflow, when you have a lot of steps. So let's say I copy paste this and I have all these steps. So let's say now we have a 4-step execution. If I want to execute the workflow here, let's say I wanted to get the data from the HTTP without having to run it, I can use the test data that we have in order to actually get the data. And in this case, the HTTP was not run because of the fact that it is pinned. But now when you want to activate the scenario and you want to get different data every single time using the HTTP request, you want to unpin this. And to do this, you can press P again. So you can P and P. That's another hack. Another hack here is actually something that a lot of people underuse, which is the AI feature on n8n. If I go here to ask the assistant and ask it, hey, hey, how can we build a human in the loop agent? This AI assistant is one of the best that I've seen on any automation platform out there because what it does is that it actually thinks through what it needs to do, but then it consults through the community, through the documents first, and then a community that has full of people who actually engage with the community. And as you can see, it says answer in the community. So it gives you 3 different places that it pulls information from. So it gives you a very, very contextual answer. And it does actually help quite a lot when you're building automations. Another hack here is that when I go inside this, for example, and I want to remove this, and I want to pull in data from the HTTP request, usually I would have to drag and drop this here. But as you can see, this is actually code. So if you can actually map this without having to drag this across. All you have to do is square bracket. I can go $. I can then look for the nodes that we have to reference. In this case, hey, I want to get information from the HTTP request node, the edit fields node, or the other edit fields node right here. Let's say I want to do HTTP request. I can then put dot, and then I have this option right here to do the item, which is exactly the one we want to do. In this case, I can now still get the output that I got before without having to drag and drop this. So the next hack is actually something that I've never seen anyone say out on YouTube before, which is the ability for us to add images on our notes. So notes are a way to document your automation, which I think is one of the best things that n8n actually put out, which is something that are lacking in the automation platforms or the way that we have it set up here. So let's say I have a note and I do image 1. Now here, instead of putting text, which you normally would, right? You're not limited by text, but you can also add images. So the way to add an image is to put an exclamation mark. You do a square bracket, this again, and now you would have to put the image URL right here. So right here we have an image URL, which you have to put to then be able to see our image here. So let me pull in an image that I have from the web. And so what I did is I actually took a screenshot of this. I made it into a public URL so anyone can access it. And if I paste it, I can see now that I have the image of this automation here. You can imagine now this gives you a lot of possibilities when you're documenting things to actually add documents or add document pictures, whatever it is that you have to put to add to the documentation that you're putting for other people to look at your automations. So the next hack is an error handling hack. So if I go here, delete this, and let's say I have a set node behind or before this, let me do copy and paste, another hack right there. Paste this, and I say I give it jmsolutions.com. So now I want to pull this variable and put it in here, drag this across. So then now this is basically scraping whatever, it's trying to access anything that I put here. Let's say I run this. Now I get an invalid URL right here because this right here does not have an HTTPS, which is what we need in order for us to actually run this. Now, let's say I go here and I go to executions. I can see that here we have an execution telling us, hey, you ran this, there was an error. So there's two things we actually can do. The first one is debug in editor. So we are able to access the way that the workflow was when it errored, which is great because now we can see exactly what it is that the input was, what is the output. But also the thing we can do is press this button right here, which is retry with currently saved workflow. So what this means is that you run a workflow, so you run an automation. In this case, it's this. Let's say your error is out. We want to try again with the same data that we had so we don't lose different things. So let's say we had a Google Sheet that was running every single day and it count the most recent 100 rows. Let's say one row failed. You still want to execute that same row, even if it failed, because it is important to us, because it's still a data point that we want to process. The next hack is actually a switch mode. Go here to edit node and I put X equals Y. This is just something that we put just to test. Now, the next step can actually be a switch node right here. So the switch node allows us to do different things. The first thing that allows us to do is to basically send the automation different ways based on where we want it to go and based on different criteria. So in this case, we have routing rules. So this means, hey, if this equals that, then send it this way. If that equals this, then send it this way. So we say we had a very easy sort of thing, add routing rule, v, or in this case, let's execute the previous step. So we had this equals to y, and this equals to x, right? So in this case, now, if I run this, and again, this is called the 0, 1, I can run this and it will send it this way because this is set to y, right? And the second thing was y. So there's actually one hack that we can do here because we can rename the output. So right here, instead of having 0 and 1, we can have this is x, or this is y in this case. And here I can have this is x. So that here I can see that this is y and this is x, which is amazing when we're trying to, let's say we get emails, we get an email that we get, and let's say that if the email contained something in the subject line, it was a support email or a FAQ email or something email, then we would rename this with support, Q&A, or something else, right? And it's amazing because it allows us to visually see exactly what's happening in the workflow. All right, so the next one is actually the n8n attributions. If I go to Gmail and I send myself an email, so let's do send a message. Let's put my email. Do hello, hey there, and I run this. This will use my email to send my email. So if I go here, I can see that on the email itself, it says this email was sent automatically with n8n. Now, ideally, we don't have this, or we don't want to have this when we're using it for businesses who are sending email to clients, because we want it to feel more personal, and we don't want to exactly say this is an automation, right? So what we do here is actually remove the n8n attribution. So if I go back here and I go to add options, I can see that I have append n8n attributions. If I turn this off, now if I rerun the automation, you can see they got another email from Michele Gem Solutions, but now there was no n8n attribution. There was no, hey, n8n send this. So that we can actually send emails that feel more personal, that don't tell them, hey, n8n send this. We have an automation set up. So you can actually use it for your own clients. So the next hack is actually on n8n forms, and it's the way that we actually design the form. So if I go in here and I want to execute the workflow and I want to, let's see, test the form, we can see that we have this color right here. We have this font, this color, this layout, which is standard for n8n. But what if you had a company that wanted something with their own brand colors that we can send to clients, that makes the client feel more aligned with, or more envisioned with the company itself? We can actually customize it. So to do that, we can add an option. We can go to custom form styling, and it gives you this code right here. So if we copy this and go to ChatGPT and we say, can you, or this is the n8n general styling, form styling code. I want the general color and theme to be blue, to be light blue. And again, this, you substitute this with anything that the client has, like brand colors and so on. So now we let ChatGPT run. And this is all within CSS, which is just a programming language that allows us to change the design of things. All right, so it just finished. And by the way, these right here, when you see hashtag something, 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 it just says blue color, blue, white, blue, blue, and very light blue. These right here represent colors. So if I copy this and I go back to n8n, I can then paste it here. And if I want to execute the step, I now see that the form is in my brand colors, it's blue, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can obviously customize the background and so on, but this adds that little touch to us actually being able to customize the form for whatever you want for our brand colors. All right, so the next hack is on a scheduled trigger. So we use a scheduled trigger and we want to run the automation maybe once a day, once a year, every second, every whatever it is, right? But now we can actually customize it even more, as in the time triggers, like when it actually runs. If you go here to trigger interval, so this is, you want to run it every second, minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months, we can actually do a custom cron. So cron is a way that we express time. So if I go here to documentation, I can see that now I have a lot more options. You can do a custom. So we can do it every day at 2 a.m. and I can copy this and then paste it here. And this signifies every day at 2 a.m. And it tells you that second, minute, hour, day of the month, day of the week. And this right here is a very custom way that you can obviously run your automations. But I think it's really, really cool that we're able to run automations whenever we want in a very, very custom order. I mean, we have a ton, right? We have every midnight, every Sunday, every Thursday, once a week. This gives us a lot more flexibility when we're building automations. All right, so the next hack is actually on the workflow and the way that data actually moves and the sequential order that it moves. So an example here is when we have an execute workflow, and let's say we have a series of steps. But we have two ways that the automation can go through, and it will go through the two ways because we have no filter involved. But which one does it do first? Well, in this case, if I execute the workflow, I can see that it goes up here first. It then waits 3 seconds because I wanted to show you that it then does everything. So this runs the workflow that is actually on the top. So if I put this to the top, we can see that now it executes this first. And this applies for anything that you do in case you have 3, in case you have 4, in case you have 5. So if you're wondering why your workflows are running the way they are in the sequential order, just know that it runs, the first workflow that it runs is the one on the top, and then it goes obviously on a vertical level, on a ladder level until the end. All right, so the next hack is actually on a webhook. So if I go here to webhooks, I can see that we have a test URL and a production URL. This is the exact same that we have on forms within n8n. And just know that the test URL is only used when you're testing the automations. And once you set them to active, so once you press this button right here, activate this. Now this will you have to change the production URL, right? You have to change the URL they're using for the external server that we have to use when you're putting it to active. So just know that test URL is when you're testing, production URL is when the automation is active. All right, so the next hack is actually calling another workflow within a workflow. So let's say I have an automation right here, and I then have X equals Y, right? That's good. And now the next step can actually be calling another workflow to do something and then giving us the data. So let's say I have execute a sub workflow, which is the action that we want to do. Now it's asking us to source the database, which is fine. And then it's asking us which workflow do you want to call in order to send the data and actually execute before getting the data back. So if I go here, I can actually create a sub workflow. So I can go workflow, personal, in this case. And now I start from scratch. So this right here, the trigger will be when executed by another workflow. Let's leave this to all, accept all data, which means that it sends everything. And now let's say I do edit field, do hello. I say my name is Michele. Let's say I do wait. I wait 5 seconds before we send the data back. So let me save this. As you can see, we already can't activate this because it always runs whenever it's called. But here I can then, let me name this hello world. I can now go here and I can choose the hello world to be the workflow that's executed, that send the data to before we get the data back. In this case, if I execute it, I can see that it's running because it takes 5 seconds. Of course, I mean, we have this step right here and then it waits 5 seconds and then it sends it back. If I go here, I can see that we have the data back, which is my name is Michele. So this right here, what it did is that it sent the data to the workflow and then got it back. And now I can move on to the next steps. If I go here, I can see that executions. So this was successful and then it sent the data back. So this is great when you're building automations because of the fact that when you build a linear workflow, which means that it follows a very specific process and it's just one line, you can't actually add more automations here unless you actually call them, right? So in this case, this sort of acts as an AI agent, which is similar to make.com's AI agent in the sense that it actually calls workflows, predefined workflows, and it gets the data back. All right, so the next hack is actually using a loop over items. So in this case, we have an automation that starts with a list of YouTube channels. It then lists all the videos. It then scrapes the comments from those videos in order for us to actually be able to know exactly what people want. And in order for us to have a database full of content ideas and hooks and outlines that we can use to generate content for us. By the way, if you want to watch a full video, check it out right here. And so right here, when we go to Apify is scraping all the comments. But in this case, it gives us 505 comments, which we then have to send to AI. Now, typically with AI, it doesn't actually take in, or in this case, ChatGPT, it can't take so much context. It can't take everything at once because the way that n8n works is that we have different items. So in this case, it's 505 items, which are different comments in this case, right? Different comments. This will run through all the different comments at once. And so what we do here is actually use a loop over items, which I can find right here, loop over items, split in batches. And we tell it, hey, only send 50 through until, and run this whole thing until here. And then send it back. So we use this right here to loop it all back until we get the other 50 and we get the other 50 and the other 50 until the 505 is finished. This is great because we're sort of splitting the automation up into different items so that the automation can run the first step, go back, run a set amount of items. In this case, it's 50, it can be 30, it can be 100, 150. But in this case, we want to keep it at 50 so that AI is actually able to cover all of those. All right, so the next hack is actually within testing AI agents, because whenever you want to test an AI agent, you assume that you need to have an input. There has to be an input for the AI agent to think through what you just asked it and then give you an answer back. But what if I wanted to test only this part and I didn't want to chat with it every single time in order for it to actually run? Well, in this case, let's say I do hello. You see how now, because of the input, it then does its thing. If I go here, I can now pin the data, so I don't have to keep chatting to it every single time in order for the actual agent to run. But bear in mind that the data that goes through the input will be the chat input, which is hello. And another hack that you can do is actually press this button right here so you can manipulate the input. In this case, let's do how's the weather in Rome and save it. So now the input changed and that's what is going to be fed into the AI agent every single time. So if I go here, I can now only test this step because this is pinned and I don't have to chat to it every single time, which makes testing so much easier. And the next hack is actually something that I was wondering when I was building AI agents myself, because I thought, okay, we chat to it on n8n right here, but what if I want to activate this to a client, right? Do I have to always use Telegram or WhatsApp or Slack, whatever it is? Can't I just use something inside of n8n, a link that someone can use for a chatbot? Well, the answer is yes. Because if I go here and I go to make chat publicly available, if I copy this, and by the way, you have to activate the scenario first. So you have to activate this, activate it, and I paste this in the web. Now I can actually chat to the AI agents. If I say hello, what it will do is that it will think through the AI agents. So if I go back here, I go to executions, I can now see that we just chatted to it and the input was hello, right? And so you can actually chat to this. This would be the link that you share with the client whenever they have to talk to it or whenever you have to talk to it as a way to have a personal assistant without having to rely on Telegram or Slack or WhatsApp, whatever it is. So the next hack is actually being able to connect an AI agent to another AI agent. So let's say I go to tool and I go to agent, AI agent tool. I can now see that I have the possibility to connect the AI agent to another AI agent right here. Now this right here is an example of a workflow, an assistant that I build that uses this exact feature of calling sub-agents within the main agent. Sort of like this is the CEO of the company, and these are the head of departments, and the head of departments talk to the employees, which actually do the exact task. But this is great because previously we actually had to make an AI agent somewhere else and then be able to call it on a different workflow and then send the data back. But in this case, we can all do it in the same place. And again, the way to set it up is to go to tool, put the AI agent tool, and then you can simply do the same thing that you do here. You can put a chat model. In this case, let's do OpenAI. You can do the memory. This is here. And now you connect it to any tool that you want, right? In this case, it can be whatever. It can be Gmail here and so on. And the way to actually know whether it sends it here is to be able to give it a prompt. To tell it, hey, only execute this, or this is the data that you're going to get, and do XYZ, just like a general agent would. All right, so the next hack is actually prompting the AI agent in a very specific way. So if I go here, I know that every AI agent has a system message, which is a message or prompt that we tell the AI agent whenever we want to give it instructions. So typically the way they would look is we have overview, which is an overview of what it needs to do. Then we have tools. And the reason why we actually use these hashtags is to give it it's called markdown formatting. So this is heading 2, this is heading 1, this is heading 3. In this case, we can leave it at heading 2. And then we also have rules. It's something that people don't even put whenever they're using AI agents. Let's say the AI agent was connected to a calendar and we say, hey, can you make an event for tomorrow? How does it know today's date? Well, that's the thing about AI, because it doesn't actually remember today's date. So let me show you. So if I go here and I have no prompt in this case, and I ask it, hey, what's today's date? You can see that it says, hey, today's date is April 27, 2024. Well, today is actually 4th of September, 2025. So we know that AI is actually not the best at remembering dates, which is crucial because usually we have tools like Google Calendar or Gmail. And when we have to say different dates, so let's say we say, hey, send a meeting for tomorrow or schedule a meeting for next week, we want to be able for the AI agent to know when today's date is so that it can contextualize it when we say, hey, tomorrow or next week, whatever it is. So to actually fix that, we go here to the system message. We say today's date. This is going to be at the end of each prompt. So we have the overview, we have the rules, tools, and all that stuff. And then we say today's date. Then you put curly bracket, you put an $, and then you put now right here. Now this right here is going to be fed into the AI agent every single time as an extra so that it remembers today's date. So now if I ask it, hey, what is today's date? Because it knows the date, it can say September 4th, 2025. So this makes a difference because again, when you have calendar tools, you want to know exactly when today's date is to be able to contextualize it for next week or next month or whatever. All right, so the next hack is actually using a GPT that Chris Roberts, I don't know who he is, but he made a GPT that actually works pretty well when you want to debug or need help with automations. Now I mentioned that you can go and talk to the AI right here, the AI assistant, which pulls from the community, which pulls from different places, which is amazing, but it doesn't actually solve everything. So in this case, I use this GPT, I give it a picture, whatever it is, some tone of voice. Even if you want to ask it, hey, I want to build this automation, it actually does a pretty good job. Now I'm going to leave the link down below. Again, this is not mine, I'm not affiliated with anything here. I actually genuinely use this and I think this is actually a pretty good GPT. All right, so the next hack is actually within the HTTP request and the way that we actually set up APIs. So sometimes when we want to add an app, let's say I go to on app event and I want to look for an app, but it's not here. I then have to go to Google and search up the app name, so the software name, let's say ClickUp, and we search up ClickUp API documentation. And we get on this page. Now this page is an API documentation, it follows a very standard way of that it looks. We have different requests, we have the summary of the request, and then we have something called a curl. Now this curl right here is something that previously we had to manually paste into the HTTP request because we have the URL, which in this case is the one here. We have the headers, which is the one here, send headers, and we have the body in this case, which is not here. But now we can actually copy this and we can go back here and we can import curl, we can paste this and we can import it. So then now we don't have to know exactly where things have to go at each time. We can just worry about sending the data that we actually need to send and not setting things up on a HTTP request. Now, one more thing is that a lot of the times when you have to use a software like ClickUp or other softwares as well, we have to use something called an API key. Now, this is a key that we use to say, hey, this is my access token, this is my password, you can access it, right? And most of the times, the way that we actually use API keys is by adding them here. So we do API key, and this is not always standard. And then we have to put some long code that, signifies a password. But in this case, instead of putting it here every single time, so here, you can go to generic credential type. We then can go to barrier auth right here, and we can create a new credential. In this case, it can be the actual API key that you're using right here. And now you can name it whatever you want. Click up, press save. And now you're able to actually access the API key every single time, or the HTTP request is able to access the API key here. And whenever you have to use ClickUp, all you have to go is here. You can use ClickUp and you don't have to add the API key here. Now the next hack is actually batching. So a lot of the times when we do a HTTP request to a server, the server actually has limits. So let's say Airtable has a limit of, I think it was 100 requests per minute or something like that. And the HTTP request sometimes can go over that. So for us to actually limit the amount of requests that we send to the server per amount of time, we can go down here, add options. We can go to batching, and now we can add, we only want to send 50 items per this interval. In this case, is 1 second. So 50 items per 1 second. And so you have to obviously look at the limit, the API limit that the platform has. But this allows us to be more flexible and navigate errors, because a lot of the times we know there's errors when we send too many requests to the actual platform because they have a restriction. In this case, we say, hey, only send 50 through at once every second, and we can change this. This can be 10 million, right? Whatever it is that you want to do. And you can change the time frame, and you can change the amount of items that go through the API request at each time. All right, so the next hack is actually within error handling itself. Now, let's say we had a workflow that looked like this. We have the schedule trigger, which runs every 10 seconds. And then we have a HTTP request that we're calling. In this case, it's my website. So if I execute the step, this gives me the whole code. But let's say now I activated this, which runs every 10 seconds. So now it's calling the API every 10 seconds. And I wanted to, let's say I changed something like this, or added some more stuff here. I press save. So we can see here that we got an error because of the fact that, again, we put an invalid URL and this does not work. Now, the good thing about error handling is that we have debug and editor, and we have go back to the same data before that I showed you. But we also have something called an error workflow. And this just means that whenever a workflow stops working because it's an error, we call or we send the data to another workflow to then do whatever it needs to do. So let me show you exactly, because it makes much more sense once I show you. If I go here to another workflow, the personal, I can add something called an error trigger. So this error trigger basically works so that it receives all the errors from any workflow that you connect it to, and then it does whatever. So let's say I do Gmail, and I want to send myself an email whenever I receive an error from any workflow. Okay, so now I'm at the email right here. There was an error in the workflow. Let me do exclamation mark. Go here, I can press save. Now if I go back to the original automation, I have to go to settings right here, and then I have to go to error workflow. So to notify the error. So in this case, let me name this error. Right, so I know that it is this workflow right here. And now I can choose the workflow to send the data to when it errors. In this case, it will be error, as you can see here, and I press save. Now let's execute this every 5 seconds. And press save. Let me press active. So this right here should now, when it executes, it's gonna error out again, like here, as you can see. It errors out every 5 seconds. And if I go here, I can see on the executions that this was successful, as in it's getting the data because there was an error in the workflow. If I go to my email, I can now see that I have a bunch of emails saying, hey, there's an error, there's an error, there's an error. Now this is great because, let me actually turn this off because I don't want a bunch of emails here. This is great when you have different automations. So we have a bunch of automations. Let's say we have 10 or 20 within the workspace. We all connected this. We all connect all the different automations to the error trigger so that we know exactly every single time, and it does the same thing, right? Which is amazing because then we have everything centralized and we have everything within one workflow to be able to notify us when there's an error. All right, so the next hack is actually called a human in the loop. So let's say I had a simple automation like this. I can go here, I can go to human in the loop, and this is across multiple different platforms. So let's say I use Gmail and I send myself an email and I execute previous nodes, just an example. In this case, it's an error, so I can't do that, but say hello, how's this? Hello, how's it going? Let's say I pull something from before, previous step. And then we have the response step, which is essentially saying, hey, when I send you the email for you to check or something, submit something, do you want it to be an approval so you can approve or disapprove? Do you want it to be free text so you can actually give me feedback, or do you want it to be a custom form? So in this case, let's do approval. Let's say I already sent the email. I can get this and I can approve right here. Now this sends the data back right here, and we got the approval. Right, approved equals true. And now this is great in case you're building automations like these. And by the way, this is a human in the loop AI sales agent that basically starts with the form, right? Let me execute it actually to show you, which has different fields. So James, email, company name, intent, budget, project description, and timeline. Then we add it to the sheet. We talk to the sales agent to make a sales email, which then is being sent to us for us to say, hey, approve or deny, or actually get feedback. Then when we give it feedback, the text classifier classifies whether this is good feedback or bad feedback. If it's negative, then it uses feedback to rewrite the email, and it goes through the whole thing over and over again until we give it a positive feedback saying, hey, all good, and then it actually sends the email to the lead. And by the way, I made a full video showing you how I built this step by step. You can check it out on the screen. All right, so that marks the end of me showing you all the n8n hacks that I learned through building automations the hard way. Now, if you are a beginner and you want to get started within automations, then make sure to check out my free school community down below. It is free for now, but we are making it paid at 500 members. It contains a bunch of people who are so excited to build automations. We have a classroom section with a course coming very soon and templates to every single video that I've done before with weekly recordings and also discount codes with over 20K of discounts. And we have 2 weekly calls every single week, and 1 automation session where we actually build something live and we answer any automation question. So make sure to check it out down below. And if you want to dive deeper into n8n and actually start building your first AI agent from scratch, then make sure to check out this video on the screen. With that being said, I hope you found value from this video, and I'll see you in the next one.